When landlords are signing new leases with tenants, a big variable in there can be the length of that lease. 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, even more. So how do you go about calculating that? What are the variables involved for the length of your lease with your rental tenant? So today, nobody knows better than Janine with Circle Property Management. Welcome.
Hi, Rob.
All right, let's speak to these landlords who are considering options. Everybody wants longer terms, but how do you go about addressing that?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one I get from landlords often is what should the lease length be? Um, our recommendation would be 12 to 24 months for
Mm-hmm.
that initial lease. And reason being, at least 12 months. We would consider anything under 12 months to be a short-term lease. We wouldn't do those. And so 12 to 24 months, 24 months is kind of a good check-in, see if all parties are still happy, everything's going okay. And then also to look at what the current rent is and if rent should be increased at that point. So it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that we'd only rent to somebody for 24 months. There's always the possibility of renewing that lease, but for us that's a good lease term is somewhere between 12 and 24 months.
Got it. Well, for the initial lease, that sounds good. But what about month to month? If tenants are calling and for the initially there's like, hey, can we go month to month? Or they're renewing and they ask to go month to month. What's your opinion on that?
Well, definitely we wouldn't do a month to month to start. That's could be a
That's
recipe for
no,
disaster.
no.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be a big no. Um, it could be dependent upon the tenant's history, month to month at the end of a lease. Let's say they're moving out, they're buying something else, they need a little bit of additional time. I mean, that's something a landlord could consider again based upon the tenant's history. Some areas where you could get into trouble with month to month is if the lease is up over the summer, which would be a great time to lease out your property again, and the tenant wants to go month to month, and then they end up giving you notice in October that
Two
they're
weeks
moving out.
before Christmas, just before
Right.
Christmas, they're moving
Yeah, yeah.
out.
And of course we see it, we see rentals slow down a little bit over the winter months. And so it just puts you in a little bit of a situation where it might take a little bit longer now to rent out your property.
Yeah. But again, if you've had a tenant for years, nothing wrong with being flexible as long as you have the comfort that that month to month ideally won't come back to bite you.
Yeah, and something to also think about with the lease term is, what you're saying, the longer the lease term, the less turnover you have on your property, which is always good for the property. But the shorter the lease term, the more flexibility you have. I mean, you wouldn't want to get locked into, say, a 4-year lease at a specific rental amount, and then all of a sudden you see prices go way up in your area, and you're locked into that. So there's things to consider on both sides for sure.
Right. So a number of variables in that. We want longer, we want continuity, but you also want the flexibility. So 1 year, 2 years, month to month, a lot to consider and a lot of variables. And again, getting the professional opinion helps you in the long run. So, all right, Janine, thanks for your insight as always. Much appreciated.
All right. You're welcome,
Take care.
Rob. Bye bye.